the risks are very real. Here to discuss is a man who showed up on the scene yesterday, Jorge Ventura, national correspondent for NewsNation. Jorge, good as always to speak with you, sir.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so what happened yesterday with the cartels and the Border Patrol agents?
So, Vince, in Fronton, Texas, which is in the Rio Grande Valley, it is an area that is notorious for cartel activity, migrant smuggling. When I was reporting for the Daily Caller a couple years ago, that was an area where we would actually be documenting children being smuggled in the middle of the night. You constantly heard gunfire. And yesterday, Border Patrol was patrolling that area, and according to our sources, cartel members were actually trying to cross a group illegally through the river, and that's when they opened fire at the Border Patrol. Border Patrol took cover, they returned fire, and they called for backup. That group that the cartel members were attempting to cross over did not make it onto American soil. We arrived shortly on the scene, and as soon as we arrived, we saw multiple agencies there, local law enforcement, Texas DPS, and we also saw Border TAC. That's the elite unit within Border Patrol. They were armed ready. They did secure the area. We spoke with officials who say that no one was hit. There are no injuries. As of now, there are no arrests. They are continuing to investigate that with Mexican authorities, but it just once again kind of highlights the danger Border Patrol is facing right now on the southern border. And Vince, this also comes just last week. Also, an American hiker on the California border was actually shot by cartel members. That American hiker actually had to be airlifted by Border Tech, that's that elite unit of Border Patrol. So it was a frightening situation, and it was a situation that agents did secure the area, but they're going to further investigate. But, yeah, things are kind of spicing up here on the border ever since President Trump did declare Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
Yeah, he did. I was about to ask about that. So do you think has the intensity of the conflict ramped up since the president's designation? In other words, the cartels get slapped with the terror label, and now is this sort of a reaction to that from the cartels?
So what is interesting, Vince, is I've been reporting on the border now for 4 years, and typically when it comes to cartels and American law enforcement, cartels want to do whatever it takes to avoid any attention from American law enforcement because it could bring attention to areas where they're migrant smuggling or drug smuggling. So we're kind of seeing this change of tactic. I spoke with my sources in Mexico, in Tamaulipas. That's where the shots rang out. And according to my sources, they say because of President Trump's executive orders and cracking down on the border and making it also harder for humans to cross illegally, they say expect those cartel smuggling cases to ramp up dramatically, and we could possibly see more clashes. Yesterday was an example of that. So once again, it's a very frightening situation for Border Patrol. They already have a lot on their hands. Also in that Rio Grande Valley, we did see yesterday 400 additional troops arrived. That was deployed actually from Governor Greg Abbott, part of the Texas Tactical Border Force. So the troops are also here to provide assistance to the Border Patrol agents. But the good news is the Border Patrol agents were injured in yesterday's shooting.
That is good news. Do you get the sense that the armed presence of American law enforcement and military is only going to increase now as a result of all of this?
I certainly think so, and they do have the attention of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Obviously, President Trump has been sending troops here. According to the Department of Defense, they're even ready to deploy 2,000 more Marines to the border if it's needed. I'm going to be interesting to see if we continue to see kind of these clashes. And like I said, we are going to see an increase anytime you do have a more tighter border security and more enforcement. You are going to see the smuggling cases really, really pick up. I've been actually speaking with a resident on the California border in the El Centro area. He actually has a game camera set up out there just for animals, but he's noticing a lot of individuals now crossing illegally. And now under this administration, they are not trying to turn themselves into Border Patrol. They are looking to avoid. So these are technically gotaways that are making it into the country. So I personally would expect some more clashes, especially when these smuggling cases pick up now that we have more enforcement on the southern border.
What are you hearing about border encounters? I'm seeing reporting, I was talking about some of it just in the last half hour, that the numbers have dropped dramatically from where they were under President Biden, in particular at the peak of December of 2023. What are you seeing out on the border?
So, Vince, when we talk about those declines in illegal crossings, dramatically is not underselling it. I mean, we are seeing illegal crossings just absolutely plummet. Just a couple of days ago, I was in the Del Rio sector, which includes Eagle Pass has been a hot spot for illegal crossings under the Biden administration. That's also back in 2021 where you had these 17,000 Haitians under the bridge that happened in that sector. And I was speaking with Texas DPS, and they said that just in one day, this is extremely rare, but in one day, they actually had a total of only 60 migrant encounters for an entire sector. That's shocking, Vince, because I'm used to seeing 60 to 100 to 200 come in a single group, across the river. That was kind of the daily images you saw under the Biden administration. So the crackdown has worked. I've been speaking with sources also in Mexico. Ever since President Trump ended that CBP-1 program, some migrants are starting to self-deport back to their home countries. They are choosing not to live in Mexico. So the illegal crossings have been, I've personally just been shocked of how low they've already gotten. I did expect, obviously, with President Trump in, you have tougher border security, more of a hardline messaging.
Right.
But then those numbers were going to decrease eventually. But to absolutely plummet, like I said, for 60 migrant counters for a whole border sector doesn't even seem real saying it.
What has this done for morale in Customs and Border Protection and ICE specifically?
It's been a complete 180. When you speak with Texas DPS, when you speak with Border Patrol agents, they feel like they finally have what they call a fighter in the White House, and they have a commander-in-chief that has their back. Under the Biden administration, it's obvious now, but morale was record low. I remember speaking to a Border Patrol agent, and he says, and I will never forget this quote, he says, "I feel like an Uber driver. We are no longer patrolling the border. We are just doing processing." He's like, all I do is pick up migrants, take them to a processing center, and repeat that for 10 hours. So the morale has completely flipped already. We did see DHS Secretary Kristi Noem today on the ground in New York City with the ICE raids. You never saw that with Mayorkas. So you already feel the morale, and you were already feeling that change the month ahead before Trump took office. I was down here in Texas as well, and Tom Homan came and actually visited. So the energy, you could already feel that they finally have someone that has their back. You have a border czar that has the exact same messaging as the law enforcement here in Texas. And
one of the things that I've noticed about all of this that I think is kind of the remnants of the Biden administration in terms of just these awful scandals that administration gave us. The fact that Tom Homan and ICE are in the process of gathering thousands upon thousands of very violent criminals up who are roaming our streets free, they didn't start the investigation into who these people are in the last few days. The reason they're able to go after these people is because the government already knew they were here. And the Biden administration let that happen, Jorge. Doesn't this seem like one of the biggest scandals of a very scandalous administration?
Yeah, when I talked to people, I said one of the biggest policy failures when it came to immigration for the Biden administration was the catch and release. Border Patrol agents, instead of just apprehending individuals coming to the country illegally, then sending them into a migrant detention center, they were released into the country. They were released with an NTA, so that's a notice to appear in court. And when the system got so overwhelmed, I remember interviewing countless of Venezuelans who didn't have court dates for another 7 years. And on top of that, when Border Patrol agents will run background checks on these individuals, because Venezuela doesn't share background information on those individuals, we have no idea who we are releasing into the country. Eventually, now we find out that we started releasing Trinidad gang members into the U.S. According to Tom Homan, he believes Trinidad was active in at least 16 states. And I think that what really highlighted this in opened the eyes of Americans across the country was the Lincoln Riley trial, when they found out that Jose Ibarra entered the country illegally. He was then released, went to New York City, and technically we were all paying for his hotel stay. He then gets a humanitarian flight to Georgia where he commits a murder.
Yeah.
Those are the stories of many across the nation. So now it's about getting those individuals, removing those individuals as fast as they can. I've actually been surprised with just how fast the administration has already caught so many Trinidad gang members across the country already, and already put them in process of removal.
Yeah, for sure, including the guy who was involved in taking over that Colorado apartment complex. They just picked him up, one of the ringleaders there. The left has spent so long, Jorge, pretending like none of this is happening, to the extent that it is, that they say things like, oh, immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than Americans. They make these excuses for illegal immigration into the United States. And yet I think the American people, the polling is really clear on this. Everyone is on Trump's side. Everybody. They're on Trump's side on getting control of all of this. And I would say, lastly, that I think that the Trump administration has been very smart about how they handle this in public, which is not only are they doing exactly what they promised they would do, which is rounding up all of these violent illegals, but they're also publicizing it. They're putting cameras out in the field. They're talking to the press. They're showing people the murderers and the rapists and the child sex abusers that they're picking up and say, see, we're doing it, and these people actually exist.
And Vince, as much as putting out all the photos and videos of all these arrests, and it's important to show American voters what's going on, I think it's even more important, just from being here on the ground, that messaging to individuals who are thinking about crossing illegally. Now they know we are not going to be in a catch-and-release program. We will be removed and deported. So that is powerful as well. Here in South Texas, across the southern border, it's a community that's overwhelmingly Hispanic, votes Democrat for decades. The Latino voters here felt that they were ignored for years under the Biden administration, and they want to see mass deportations. I believe I was looking at polling back in 2016, mass deportations only had about 36% for the American public. That has jumped up, depending on what polling, around 60% now. So it's really amazing kind of to see that turnaround. And the Latino voters in South Texas, this is exactly what they voted for, and this is what they want to see. It was their communities that were first impacted before the rest of the nation started to see the fallout of the border crisis.
Yeah, it's a sign of how bad things have gotten. It took seeing these horrible things happen to all of our communities to turn public opinion so robustly. But man, the president executing on exactly what the voters put him in office for. Hey, Jorge Ventura, thank you very much with NewsNation. Always such a fantastic reporter. Always appreciate your insights from the border, sir. Thank you.